Welcome to this week's edition of Dugout Dish Podcast. I'm Andy Kirikides, joined by my wonderful bearded co-host, Keith Glasser. How we doing?
Great. How are you?
Got another esteemed guest this week. I'm going to kick it over to you to intro this man, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, we have another gentleman with a phenomenal beard, better than mine, arguably. But a phenomenal human being, a great baseball coach who's been in the NESCAC for, I know as a head coach for 11 years, and we'll let him kind of get into his path when he introduces himself here. But tonight we're joined by Trinity College head baseball coach Bryan Adamski. Bryan, thanks for coming on tonight.
You bet, guys. Thanks for having me. I got a little more gray in here than you guys do, but
mine's getting there daily. So chasing our 2-year-old around does it to you.
Yep.
But before we kind of get into all our questions here, just kind of give our listeners a little bit of a rundown of how you ended up as the head coach and going into your 11th season here at Trinity.
Sure. And if you guys don't mind, I think since this is a recruiting podcast, my recruiting journey as a player was pretty unique, and probably worth sharing because my coaching journey is pretty straightforward. So I might as well tell this story first. So I went to a very small high school in Western Massachusetts. I was in South Deerfield, Mass. It's Frontier Regional High School. So I guess it's like the small town story where you kind of go football, basketball, baseball, spend the summer playing a little hoop, spend the summer playing a little baseball, just enjoying, I guess, my high school experience, not really thinking too much about anything else, believe it or not. I know a lot of kids start thinking about the college process super early, but it was kind of just that season to season. And then I was able to secure a partial scholarship relatively early from URI for baseball. And I hadn't even fully decided that baseball was a sport I wanted to continue playing, but was humbled and excited about the offer. And then summer going into my junior year, I blew out my knee in a 7-on-7 passing tournament in football. And it got really, really scary really quick. So URI heard about my injury, communicated with them, told them like my plan to rehab. I ended up kind of losing that scholarship as it was constructed. Now they gave me some other academic money when they could, but as a young kid, hearing like my scholarship was gone, it was a very, very tough pill to swallow. Head was spinning. I probably didn't process it and deal with it the right way. And what I mean by that is I kind of just got scared by the money going away, and I was like, they must not want me anymore. So I decided not to go there. The problem was I decided not to go there, and I didn't really know where I was going. So I'm trying to rehab from my knee injury. I'm trying to figure out, am I going to be back to play football and have one more chance to maybe get recruited there? Probably wasn't good enough to play college basketball, so it was down to those two sports. And I ultimately ran out of time. I mean, by the time I came back from my full knee reconstruction, I had to kind of showcase that last summer going into my senior year. And was able to get a scholarship offer. At the time, it was Takeo Post University. Now it's Post University in Waterbury, Connecticut. So I went there for a year. I was able to be a two-way guy, so I was able to pitch and play positionally, which I really wanted to do at least at the start of my career. And then had another injury where it was a serious injury. I got a med ball dropped on my head during like a morning plyometric workout. So severely damaged my neck. So I knew I was going to have to sit out a year anyway to get that squared away. So that's when I decided to transfer back home to UMass, where I spent my final 3 years of my college career. I absolutely loved it. So I am a believer in that everything happens for a reason. I could have done without the pain of the injuries, but I was ultimately happy with how everything happened. But I certainly understand. As a head coach now, I sympathize with kids and families whenever they are in the process, if they just have no idea what to do, who to reach out to, how this works. Are they early? Are they late on the timeline? Their head is just completely spinning, because I was certainly one of those kids. And then when I thought I had it figured out, I really didn't, because I had to start from scratch. So I think it's great that you guys are, doing this podcast and giving coaches a platform to kind of share their knowledge on the recruiting piece. And I know I'm not alone in doing this, but I will have colleagues here at Trinity, whether they're, their son or daughter is of recruiting age, or they're just trying to help a family friend. It's like, hey, can you talk with so-and-so and just answer some questions, right? Because everything kind of seems to be like, pay for this service if you want good advice, pay for this website if you want to be, recognized and have a chance to play at the next level. So it's good to have this as a resource to people to tap into. So I think it's great that you guys are doing this, especially as former coaches. So anyway, that was my journey as a player. I finished at UMass. Again, I was kind of damaged goods by the time I was done playing. I had a major arm injury while I was there that I kind of just like played through, because I wasn't ready to like end my career on an injury. So I kind of just battled through some injuries, but had a good career at UMass. And I didn't plan on coaching. If I did think about coaching, it was certainly not at the college level. I had thought a little bit about maybe, I didn't grow up too far from Deerfield Academy, so I knew of like the prep school stuff a little bit, where I could teach and maybe coach, maybe get some free housing as a young kid. I thought that was a pretty good start in coaching, but I didn't think of getting into college coaching. So the job I took when I was done and graduated was I started working at a Gold's Gym in Amherst, Mass, so right off the campus of UMass. So I got my personal training certification, just started training clients to make some money, started working some front desk hours there. And Bill Thurston called me at Amherst College. He was there and he was heading into his final season, and he had lost a coach kind of right at the start of the season, and knew I had graduated, knew I was still local. So he reached out to me, literally just called me and said, you want to be my part-time guy? You'll work with the catchers and help out with the hitters. So that's the true kind of part-time commitment there that, my part-time guy has here. You're pretty much just doing a different job during the day. You're trying to get out on time. You're, breaking the speed limit to get to practice, trying to get to games, driving yourself there. It's like you show up, you provide whatever support and coaching you can, and then, you do it all again the next day. But that was a great way to get my start in coaching, because number one, my first year was under a coaching legend. I mean, Bill had been doing it successfully back when he started. Amherst was still playing like Division I schools. So he had a lot of guys, play pro ball out of his program. He was a very well-known coach. I knew of him being a Western Mass guy. So it was really cool. Even though I was working with the catchers, I worked pretty closely with Bill and the pitchers. So he still ran the pitching staff in his final year. So I was probably more interested on the pitching side stuff than I was on developing the three catchers that he had given me. So I was always just hopping in with the pitchers meetings, trying to learn like what I could about the mechanical side of pitching from him. I mean, he was, I don't think I'm giving him too much credit. I mean, Bill was one of the original pitching gurus before like Tom House came along and Ron Woolforth and these type of guys. So it was great to kind of just be a fly on the wall and learn as much as I could during his 1 year. From there, continued doing the gym thing for another year, part-time. It was for a different head coach. So Bill retired and Brian Ham had an interim year. We ended up having a pretty good year, and he got the interim tag removed right after that spring. I stayed with Bry for another 3 years. During those 3 years, it was a pretty interesting cross section of jobs that I then transitioned to. So I had fallen in love with coaching after the 2 part-time years, and the guy at the gym owner basically like pulled me off to the side, and he was like, you're not around here like as much as you should be. So he kind of gave me the ultimatum of like, do you want to continue working at the gym and kind of take on an expanded role? So I would have been like the assistant GM or whatever. Or do you want to, so do you want to work here, or do you want to like just do coaching? And he thought for sure I would take the full-time job at the gym. He knew I was making like $7,000 at Amherst College or whatever it was. And I just remember it was a very easy decision. I said, I'm done with this. The gym stuff was cool, but do I want to be a personal trainer when I'm 30, 40, 50? Like, absolutely not. Do I want that to be it, just like walking into a gym every day and that being your existence and your professional life? So the answer was no. So he gave me the decision. I just said, I appreciate the job, but I'm going to pursue coaching. So then from there, like I said, it got really crazy. So I applied to Springfield College to get my master's. I knew that was something I was going to need to secure to become a head coach. So I did their sport management master's program, which was a 2-year program. While doing that, so then I became the full-time guy at Amherst, and I still had to make more money than that to kind of to make ends meet, especially with like the college bills coming in. So then I got a job through a temp agency to work at Yankee Candle in shipping and receiving. So I was like slinging candles in the back of trucks. It was crazy, like such a diverse, interesting group of people to work with. And I don't regret a second of it. I mean, those shifts sucked. Every second of it sucked. You come home, you stink of candles. It stinks up the whole house. My wife's getting upset. So, because it's not the nice smell of candles, you're just a cross section of like, imagine burning like 10 different scented candles all at once. That's what you smell like. It's basically just like a random scent that you come home smelling like. But without those jobs, I don't think I would appreciate where I ultimately landed, and where I'm very happy, which is at Trinity right now. So I continued doing that for my entire grad school career. I was taking classes and teaching. Oh, it's also worth noting, because I think this was important for me getting the Trinity job. At Springfield College, I ended up getting a grad assistantship for the chair of the sport management department, Dr. Pantera. So the second year, I started teaching some of his classes. So like assistant teaching some of his classes as like a TA. So that gave me teaching experience, which was actually really important for me when I applied to Trinity. It was something that like separated me as an applicant on my resume, that I actually had like college teaching experience, because I am technically an assistant, now an associate professor at Trinity. I'm not staff. I'm teaching faculty. I do some PE stuff here. So it was an important piece for me to get this job. But yeah, those were long days. It was class for myself at Springfield, also teaching there, flying out of there, driving back to Amherst, which isn't, I mean, they're both in Western Mass, but that's like a 35, 40-minute drive, depending on traffic. So I would, coach there, get up, log a shift during the week, partial shifts at Yankee Candle, sleeping at home sometimes, sleeping in the office at Amherst sometimes. Like it was, those are some long, long days. Actually, when I was there, at Springfield, the only other conflict that I had and had to wrestle with and sort out was, do I want to stay in coaching, or do I want to go the front office route and do like big league, like operation stuff? So I had secured for my internship. What it came down to was I was going to either get internship for being the head coach at North Adams for the Steeplecats, or I had secured a job, a paid internship with MLB International. So obviously the coaching one would have been to stay in coaching. If I had chosen the other one, that would have been kind of me turning my back on coaching and trying to make it in like start the front office as the low man and try to work my way up. So I ultimately turned that internship down, and it was coaching ever since then. Graduated from Springfield, and that year, so that was 2013. We had an unbelievable team at Amherst College. Ran through the NESCAC that year. We were one win away from going to the College World Series. We lost to Ithaca in that regional. That was back when it was like the 6-team regional rate to the College World Series. So we lost in Ithaca. Trying to remember they had Ithaca had a couple pro guys on that team. One of them was like he was a really fast guy.
Tim
Lecastro.
Lecastro, there you go.
He's with the Mets, right?
Yeah. So that was his year. That was his like senior year, and they had some really good arms. But anyway, yeah. So we ran up against a really good Ithaca team, and we're 1 win short. And that year in 2013, that was when I'm trying to think. Yeah. So Bill Decker had already left the previous year for Harvard. So Mark Lambert was there with Steve Cervisi and Ernie May as the interim guys. So I knew that job was going to come open, whether they gave it to Lambert as like the guy that was already there, or if it was truly an open job. So I actually applied during that year, during that playoff run, and I didn't hear anything back from Trinity. So I was like, all right, well, I'm not in that final group. So we make the run through the NESCAC tournament, which Trinity hosted that year. And the AD was like the site rep for it. And he actually came up to me after we won it. And he just said, hey, we started our search. You weren't part of it, but, it was fun to watch you guys. And you had a really good run. Like, I've heard good things about you. So we're going to add you as like the last interview of that group. So very fortunate, like how that happened. I actually got this job on my 29th birthday. So yeah, 11 years here. It's hard to believe. The 2 COVID years, you can't really count. So we had a 3-game season and then a 17-game season. So that makes time feel even more fleeting. But yeah, I love it here. And my wife and I built a new house in Granby last year, Granby, Connecticut. So we were Western Mass natives up until that point. So finally became a Connecticut resident. Yeah, and happy to talk more about this place.
We have a lot of things in common, Bryan, that I now am remembering, and some other things. So we got to chat it up for a minute after we get off this, because the UMass connection, the Western Mass, the Steeple Cats. Like, I grew up playing like in Joe Wolf Stadium.
Yeah, man.
As a kid. It's a good spot. So
yeah, I had 2 summers up there in North Adams. I loved. God, it was that, you want to talk about a place to like cut your teeth, man. I learned so much. I mean, if I'm remembering this right, the first year I met with Sean McGrath, I was named head coach. I think I was 24. If I'm remembering that, 24 or 25. Anyway, so I remember I had some older kids on that team. So Charlie Law jumps out as a kid. I remember being on that team. Brett Clements was an older kid. So I was 25, they were 23, 24, and like they're showing up and I'm there like head skipper. So it was such a great place to get my start, make mistakes, really get to learn like how to interact and build trust. Those were 2 just like huge foundational summers for me. But yes, I love Western Mass. I think it was like the best place in the world to grow up. I didn't touch on this either, but I was a first generation college kid also. So, my father worked at the University of Massachusetts, which was also part of the reason why I wanted to like go back there to play closer to home and around my family. But, my father grew up on a cucumber farm in Hatfield, Mass, like back when you could really thrive as a farmer, and make it. And then my mother was born in Poland, came over, I don't know, when she was 4, 5, 6 years old. So it was like there's some unbelievable blue collar Great town, hardworking people. I love Western Mass. It's kind of a bummer, you know what I mean? We had to move in Connecticut just because I loved home so much. But yes, we can certainly. I'm happy to chat Western Mass baseball with you for sure.
Hell yeah. Well, let's get into some of the recruiting stuff. Like, obviously, Trinity's a little bit unique given its academic profile. How do you how do you typically go about identifying kids? Where do you identify kids? And like, what does that recruiting process typically look like for you guys?
It's ever changing. I can tell you that. So, you know, my answer to this 11 years ago would have been different than it was 5 years ago. COVID changed it up again. So it's ever changing. I will say that. The one constant is I think I have always found or identified our best players here at Trinity from somebody that I trust, and that person that I trust understanding the type of players that I need playing for me here. And there's a lot to unpack there. So you have to know, you know, so like I'll get a Western Mass is a perfect example, you know what I mean? And I'll throw myself under the bus. I was not the smartest kid coming out of high school by any means. I was very limited where I could have gone. Like that high academic doors were not open to me coming out of high school. So, you know, you have somebody reach out to super talented diamond in the rough. Maybe somebody doesn't know about him, but he can't hack it academically here. He can't get in here, and it's probably a mistake, even if he could get in here, for me to take him, because he's going to struggle with what he has to do academically at Trinity for 4 years. So there's that part. I don't consider myself like an old school guy and like hard to play for, but I think I'm pretty. So there's some non-negotiables there in terms of like what it takes to play for me. And you know, if I'm going to trust a recommendation of a player that knows my background and knows the type of kid that can play for me and love it and thrive. So that's what I mean by the second part of that. Like, they have to know me and I have to trust them. So that continues to be the top way. Again, the longer I coach, the more expansive my network gets. So I'm you know, letting more and more people in that I trust. But if you look at our track record, you know, I'll just use this as an example. It's just on the front of my mind here. But Scott Patterson at NEB. And you guys know how small the baseball world ends up being. So Scott Patterson, I met as a teammate of mine in the NECBL our junior summer. So when we were both just kids, happy to be in Holyoke, Mass, playing baseball at Mackenzie Field, Scott Patterson and I, you know, became friends and got to know each other. And then whatever, 5 years later, we're both done playing. He pops up at BC camp, trying to talk to players and like build his summer team. And I'm one of the few guys in New England that he knows, because he came from out of the region. I think he's from somewhere down South Georgia or something originally. But so, you know, that type of relationship, you can't manufacture that. Like Scott and I trust him. We played together. He knows the type of player I was. He knows the type of players I want to coach. I'm comfortable telling him no. Like, I'll just watch a kid and he'll say, "What do you think?" And, you know, I'm comfortable telling him no. He's comfortable telling me no. I'll reach out to a kid and he'll say, "I don't know. I don't think you want him, and here's why." So that trust isn't built easily or overnight. Same thing with, you know, with a lot of we get a lot of prep school kids. So, you know, there's good and bad relationships there on the prep side, where we've had a lot of luck at certain schools and we've gotten, you know, kind of came up empty on some guys. But the other thing I will say, and I was actually just listening to Scott Landers when you had him on the podcast, and one thing that's couldn't be more different if you're talking about recruiting. So he was saying he can afford to miss on guys because he can bring in 50, 60 guys, which I almost fell out of my seat. So we're the exact opposite of that. I can't really miss on guys. We're now looking at a roster restriction of 29. So it's hard. Like, I cannot miss on guys.
I'm assuming that once you find out that a kid's talented enough, the make or break for you is going to be that character piece then, huh? Like you and I've talked to Jason a bunch about some guys and like you guys do your homework on kids and I'd love to hear you talk about that. That like, it's one of the things me and Keith talk about is that for most coaches, the talent piece is usually the easier part of the evaluation. Like you can go watch a kid throw and be like, yeah, that kid can pitch for me, but do you want him in your program?
No question. That is very well said. And before I forget it, so Jay is now my recruiting coordinator. He came over in 2019, and Jay and I met at Post as teammates. So he was a friend there. We're even better friends now. So to be able to coach with him and speak freely, and you want to talk about, again, like trust is such a big word for me. Like I trust Jay's evaluation. We talk all the time of like, is this a guy that is like a good fit for the coaching staff, and is it somebody that's going to gel well with our team? But the thing that you said about the character piece, this is one of my favorite quotes ever, and I'm not a huge quote guy, but Bo Ryan, the old Wisconsin basketball coach, has the quote, "Recruit guys you're willing to lose with." And oh my Lord, if I have learned anything, if you're going to be 500, whatever, give or take a couple of wins or losses on either side of that, if you're going to have an average season, okay, if you do it, if you go 500 with kids that you do not want to see every day, and you walk by a kid and you're almost like grinding your teeth, and listen, it happens. I'm not saying I'm perfect with this. Like, you don't recruit aces every time. We're not 29 out of 29, but I'll tell you this, like, I'm going to recruit an athletic kid. He's probably going to have to like the weight room, if not love it, and be committed to it, because we have less access to our guys than other Division III schools. So like, you have to get better through your hours not spent on the field as well, which is weight room time. You have to be able to hack it academically. You have to be able to like fit in with this group. And again, if you're not having fun with the group every day, regardless of the wins and losses, this job, that's when the work-life balance becomes a problem, because your time spent around your team becomes tougher to swallow. So I learned that the hard way. I kind of built it up very much with like people I was willing to lose with. And then once we kind of got to where we were like really excited about it, and we wanted to, like, you start talking about like, let's get back to the College World Series. Like, what's this going to take the next step? You look the other way at the character stuff. I did it. I'm telling you, I did it. And I can't recruit over those kids. They're in this program for 4 years, and now they're mine to like manage and mold. And now I'm spending my time trying to convince kids to be part of this, and try to drive selfishness out of people, and just like bad qualities that I think any baseball person would agree are bad qualities in a team sport. So yes, you are 100% right. Recruit guys you're willing to lose with, and you're probably going to end up winning more in the process because you're going to get the right ones.
Well, I think the other thing, excuse me, I couldn't agree more. I had this conversation. I was actually talking to Coach Rena yesterday, and we were talking about a bunch of stuff. I said, even though COVID was a nightmare with what we had to deal with at RPI, like one of the most fun seasons I ever had was 2021. Even though half my team couldn't play, like, I only had 18 guys, and it was kind of like a, you against the world mentality, but like, it was like, they were so fun to coach and be around. And like, that, to your point of like, recruit guys that you're willing to lose with, like, and it was a lot more fun than any other year. And like, when you're up against it, having to wear masks everywhere, like, do all this, like, looking back on it, wild stuff, like, it was a lot of fun to go through. But I think the other thing, like, and I think we talk about this as coaches on here, and I think it's important for kids to kind of understand too, like, when we're recruiting, especially the character piece, I think, you might pass on guys, not from a talent standpoint, but because you know their personality isn't going to work within your program. And that doesn't necessarily and I think sometimes when we go down this rabbit hole of like the character piece and stuff, like it doesn't necessarily mean that that kid is a bad kid or isn't going to work out. It just means like that kid might not, like, he might not love the weight room. Like, he might not want to be in there all the time. Like, he might go be successful somewhere else, but he's not going to work in your program. And I think as coaches, being able to figure those things out and identify those when you're recruiting is just as important as figuring out, like, is this kid going to seamlessly fit in from a character standpoint? Like, are they going to fit in with me? Because it ultimately, like, if they're not going to fit in with you as the head coach, like, that's good. Like, I feel like those times, like, you end up having more issues in the long run because, like, they end up getting along with the guys. But, like, you grind your teeth at it because you're like, man, you could be so much better if you just were in the weight room more. If you did more of it, you know what I mean? And I think sometimes, like, we get down the rabbit hole of character, and it's very important. But I think sometimes coaches know, like, I'm going to pass on this kid because it's not a good fit for me, not necessarily because it's a bad kid or, you know, they're worried about other stuff. It's kind of that piece of it where you kind of get mature and realize, like, yeah, I can't coach this kid.
Well, that's how I've said it to recruits in the past is like, listen, there's no doubt you're a talented player. You may even end up, because of your academic credentials, you're most likely going to end up somewhere in this conference, and I'm going to have to, like, wear this for 4 years. But this is not a fit here. And the one thing I'll say about our conference, and we have like an unbelievably strong coaching group, but I think any coach in our conference would tell you that there's, like, you know, Trinity is very different than Wesleyan. They could not be polar opposites or 20 minutes down the road. Okay. But, like, you know, we're probably, just if you're talking about the student body alone, like we're probably one of the more conservative schools in the NESCAC, and we're right next door to probably the most liberal. So, like, you feel that, and when it gets down to, like, a recruit, and it's like, I'm looking at Trinity, Amherst, and Wesleyan, it's like, just go to the campuses. You will love one, you'll be lukewarm on another, and you'll never want to step foot on the third one. So 100%, like, you're just not a fit for us. Like, you need to trust me now. Like, I've been here long enough to know what's a fit and what's not. Like, you're a good player. You have options. It's just not with us. And you have to trust that vision, that it's the right path for everybody.
Yeah. No, I mean, the Wesleyan and Trinity thing, it's like RPI and Skidmore when I was in the Liberty League. Like, they're two polar opposite schools. So, like, if you're looking at both of them, you have to legitimately show up on campus and be like, okay, which one? Because, like, you're going to get on campus and immediately have that feel of what it is and be like, nah, this isn't for me, or maybe it is, you know. But I think that, you know, to take like a step further, because I think people need to understand this type of stuff when we talk about it, and not necessarily just at the high academic world. Like, you know, I was talking to a family, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and they had like a high-end academic ACC school and a low-end, like, Division I school in the South academically. And I was like, to me, and I think sometimes, like, as coaches, when we would talk about this, you're like, these people, like, they just have no concept of what not only the baseball is, but the academic piece of it. Like, you know, if you're going to throw out Harvard and Campbell, no offense to any Campbell grads out there, but, like, those are two wildly different schools from geographics and academics. Like, yeah, they're both pretty good at baseball, but, like, there's way more that goes into this than just, like, the baseball piece of what your recruitment is going to be, or where it is that you want to be recruited at. You know, so I think, like, understanding that, like, you know, hey, you could be in the same conference with very similar schools from an academic profile, but they are wildly different campuses that you're going to like one, you're going to hate one, and one you're going to be like, maybe, I don't know. Yep. But, like, that piece of it that, like, you could be looking at a lot of similar schools, but they all are going to, like, they're all different in one way or another. And, like, that's the important part of actually getting out and, like, getting to those schools and seeing what they do. So you can kind of, you know, make those decisions when you have to.
For sure.
Sorry, I got on my soapbox there. Go ahead, Andy.
It's interesting because, Brian, we first met when I was at Vassar, and you're talking about character being a big piece of the puzzle. And I saw this at Vassar and I saw this at William and Mary's. That high character kids who like to compete can impact your program, even if they're not your best players. But at Vassar, I think first year there, we were like 5-34. I mean, it was terrible. We had 14 kids on the roster. And we didn't get better because we got like ultra more talented kids. We brought in some kids who were pipe hitters who didn't fit the Vassar mold. And then we brought in kids who were athletes and not necessarily like true baseball players. And all of a sudden you've got a tough kid from Long Island whose dad is a firefighter. And then you've got 3 multi-sport athletes that come in and it's like, oh, you've got competitive kids who want to win, who want to get in the weight room. And then 2 years later, you reap the benefits of having kids like that in your program. And when you can get the talented kids who have those character traits, that's when things usually take off. But you're talking about the difference between Trinity and Wesleyan. And like Vassar's super high academic, we'd run in to NESCAC schools all the time. If a kid was looking at Trinity, we weren't getting that kid. We needed to talk to the kid who was looking at Wesleyan or Bowdoin or Bates. Like the Trinity kid just wasn't, they're 2 different types of schools. And you got to kind of come to a realization and like, where are you going to pick your battles? But I remember that being something that was a big part of why we got better. And it was also something we had to be really cognizant of when we were recruiting kids is, you know, are we barking up the wrong tree here? Is he looking at schools that just aren't going to be of interest to him?
Yeah. And the other piece to that, just, you know, thinking of, you know, Liberty League, Centennial Conference, NESCAC, is like I feel like the liberal arts umbrella isn't a true liberal arts experience anymore. So what I mean by that is like Tufts is a major research university. They're getting pre-med kids over anybody in the country. If you look at my roster now, we're at like 90% are either econ or engineering. So our engineering program has really taken off in the last like 5 or 6 years since we've added specialties to that major. So that's the other strange piece too, is like you mentioned Joe Rena. Like I've lost a lot of guys to him in like the STEM fields. And at least, you know, I guess like knowing your niche can save you a lot of headaches in terms of like talking with kids. Cause now you can, I feel like at Amherst, the liberal arts there really allowed you to talk to anybody. And that's just not the case at Trinity. So, but I think there's a lot of schools like, isn't Vassar like the arts? You know what I mean? A lot of like writers and teachers and right. So yeah, you got to make sure you're doing your digging there for sure.
I got to ask this, and Keith obviously is well versed in this, but it's an interesting topic because it comes up with parents more often than not. The engineer track. And I know, Keith, you two could probably talk on this for a while, but it's a difficult track. It's a unique track. It's obviously a highly specialized field for kids to go into and kind of a commitment that you need to make relatively early in the process. What does that look like for your engineering majors? And how do you guys handle that from a baseball / academic balance perspective? Because I know it's one of the more difficult ones to juggle.
Yeah, there are 2 toughest. I would say like the 3rd toughest track here is political science, and that's probably the majority of the rest of our guys. I told you about the 90%, but that's kind of a long-winded answer. But I will say this: so no matter what you choose at Trinity, you are not allowed to, you know, miss class for any type of practice at all. And if you're missing a game, I mean, these things need to be so well thought out in terms of like I create an Excel spreadsheet for our guys to give to their professors, you know, and sometimes this is like they're just missing 2 Tuesday classes or missing one completely, and you need to get out of another class early or whatever it might be. But the planning that goes into communicating with professors to get approval there, and you may not. So this is why NESCAC teams will show up on a Tuesday. Like we may go to, trying to think of who's like one of our tougher midweek games. We might go play Salve Regina this year, and we'll roll off the bus, and probably will roll off the bus with 22 guys, missing 2, 3, 4 starters, depending on like what the conflict is in any given year. So we're at the mercy of the faculty to say like, we'll work with you. We'll find some like makeup assignments for you, or you can maybe save up some absences and maybe miss that one if it's like a really important game. But yeah, it's truly academics first. There's a lot of the engineers have a lot of afternoon labs. Okay, those are a problem. That's right at the start of practice. So we have guys running down the hill at 4:30, 4:45. If it gets out on time, we start practice at like 4:30. So there'll always be a trickle of guys starting at 6 o'clock on the tail end of practice. So the way we shape practice is, we'll have early work before practice. We'll have our core block where we're going to spend 60 minutes, 45 minutes doing a team block. So that's all of our first and third stuff, bunt offense versus bunt defense, having the discussion about like back picks, let pitchers talk with the middle guys. Like there's a team block where we have everyone, and then the slow trickle starts where guys will be leaving, and then practice may end, and we may have some of the guys that missed early work stay and get an extra round of BP, or like our left side of our infield will stay and get some extra work. So it's always start with the academic grid and like see where you can fit in baseball and weight room around it. And it's sometimes it's like a laughably hard challenge when you're looking at the pockets of time that you have to sandwich baseball into. But again, this is all I've known. I've been in NESCAC for 15 years. So this is when I think of college baseball, this is what it is to me.
Yeah, I think the one thing that at the higher academic levels, if you aspire to get there, and especially if it's in STEM, I spent 10 years at RPI, so the trying to fit practice in around the vast majority of engineers. I mean, they were the engineer, like it's the Rensselaer engineers, like it's what the majority of your kids are. But the labs, the projects, all the stuff that these kids have to do from an engineering standpoint takes up a lot of time. And trying to find that to fit in. But I think the one thing that, at least in my experience when I was at RPI, like those kids they're super driven academically. And like this is true across the board in all of high-end academic sports by and large, I would say. But they're super driven to the point where like they're the vast majority of your guys. And if you're doing a really good job from a culture standpoint, which I know that you guys are, like those kids that are missing, it's not like one, they're pissed that they can't be at practice or they can't go to a game, which you like and like in the grand scheme of things, like you get it, like you can't take them sometimes. But they're also usually willing to do more for you off the field than I think in some other places you might not get what you would want out of those kids, because they want to be good, just as good on the field as they do off the field and in the classroom. So I always thought I coached Division I and Division II before I got to RPI. And I was like, what is this class stuff? Like, not to say that you had guys missing class to go to practice, but like just the sheer amount of class and the amount of guys that like, it could be Tuesday, Thursday was a heavy day for classes when I was at RPI. Like you'd get Thursdays, forget about it. You might have, I might have 13, 15 guys for like practice. So it was like I just flipped it into more or less like individual days, especially in the season, because it's like, you can't really get much done. But I think it's something that you should know going through the process of but if you end up at a STEM school and you want engineering, like that's what you're opting into. So this is what it's going to be. You just have to know, like there's going to be times you're going to have to put in a little bit more effort than other people might have to, because if you want to be good on the field and in the classroom, there's a lot of extra work that has to be put forth by you in order to be able to get on the field and be good in the classroom. But they are I live that life. I don't envy it anymore. Bryan, I don't envy the position you're in now, because I would lost sleep over trying to plan practice with 29 engineers.
Yep. Yeah. And then the flip side of that. So at UMass, this is a kind of a funny story. So I transferred in from Post, and I didn't even, during the course of my career, I never met my actual student advisor, because through athletics, we had a student athlete advisor.
Mm-hmm.
So I will never forget this. And this is part of my recruiting pitches. If there's any of my current players' families listening, they'll probably get a chuckle at this because they've heard the story. So I sit down with my student athlete advisor, and we're building our schedule, right? So this is late summer. At UMass, there's 26,000 kids. So it's not like selecting your classes is hard like it is here. I could have taken, really anything that was available. And so he's like, what do you want to major in? I can see you were kind of like sport management. You were starting sport management track. And I was so excited because I had thought about this. And I was like, I would love to do maybe like exercise science, kinesiology here. And I was like, how about that? Like, I know what I'm going to do. And he laughed me out of the room. He said, there is no way you are completing this major as a baseball player. So the A10 had just gone to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, single games. It used to be Friday, Saturday with a doubleheader on Saturday. So if you were away for an A10 series, you traveled on Thursday, you woke up, had like a quick workout Friday morning and then played Friday afternoon. So I was missing essentially like Thursday, Friday, and then you throw in the midweek stuff, Tuesday, Wednesday, no chance.
Nope.
So he just said, try again. And that's how I ended up being a double major in English and journalism, because he asked me what else I was decent at doing. And I told him, like, I'm a pretty good writer. Like, reading and writing is good. So there you go. That's the D1 choose your route sometimes. But again, I was there in fairness to that process. I was happy to do it. I was there to play baseball. I loved it. Was so happy to be playing like so close to home in Division I baseball. I mean, I grew up watching those really good UMass teams in the 90s. That's what made me fall in love with baseball. So it didn't break my heart to to have to pivot and not choose the major I wanted, but kind of a funny story there. It's not that way at Trinity.
I'd like to have you educate the crowd on kind of the timeline and the process for NESCAC and high academic schools. So like 2025s are walking into their junior spring, right? Where are you guys at, and what does that process look like for the 2025 class in terms of how you go about getting organized, evaluating kids, visits?
Yep. So here we go. I will start by saying we will have, either through our camps that we had at Trinity or just from being on the road, we will have some, and I mean some, like I can even quantify that. It's probably 20 to 30 2025s that we just made notes of to like follow. I'm yet to bear the fruit from starting my recruiting class with those guys, because for whatever reason, like those guys always seem to be like, you circle back with them, they're already committed somewhere else at D1, or they've, you know what I mean? They're kids that are the best players, best 25s that you saw is like during their sophomore year, the year prior. So it makes sense that they're off the board. So it doesn't really do us a ton of good to get a jump on 25s. So our 24 class is done and has been wrapped up since our early decision one deadline. We're looking at 25s, but like there's really not a ton going on. We just started our season, so we're knee deep in developing our own guys. So whenever our season ends, sometime in May, it's start with some high school playoff stuff, Mass, Connecticut, New Jersey. Just go watch some of the best teams compete in the state tournament. It's actually really fun to do it. There's maybe some prep stuff still going on, but the prep playoffs and calendar are a bit earlier, so we usually miss most of that stuff as well. So we start there, and then it's June, July, August, doing the head first, the show ball, the Boston Classic, make a couple trips to Diamond Nation, maybe another couple trips to like Yafang to see some stuff, and we're kind of collecting names. We also have our own camps. We have one in June, one in July, and then we have a 2-day camp in September. So this is probably not a surprise. Our June camp is the smallest enrollment, right? So everybody thinks they're going not to Trinity, they're going to LSU, Harvard, Duke, you name it, in June. So nobody wants to like come get evaluated by us. July will gain some momentum, usually up to like 40, 50 guys. And then our September camp, which is when everybody kind of falls back to reality. And we've continued to communicate with these players and families. We usually like sell out that camp, which is around like 75 guys, and we'll do 2 sessions with it. And which is why it's our 2-day camp. So, and what's cool about that one is we also have our players back on campus to kind of like help out and answer questions as well. But from there, we will start our overnights. So at Trinity, the way I've always done it, just to minimize class time missed for kids, is to have them show up Friday morning, go to a morning class, have some lunch with the guys, go to an afternoon class. We have fall baseball back in the NESCAC, thank God. So going to watch either a workout or a strength and conditioning, or it's like an on-field workout or a strength and conditioning workout. Dinner with the guys, spend the night, get up, go to a home competition on campus. So either like a men's or women's soccer game, football game, field hockey, whatever, just get a sense of Trinity athletics. And then, when we're done, it's usually 2, 3, 4 Fridays in a row. We'll host 5 guys every weekend. Usually only have to host about between like 20 and 30 guys to fill our recruiting class. So we take the commitments. It's usually like late August, September, October, and then get everybody applied and squared away for ED1, which is November 15th for us. So the only thing I forgot to throw in there is, so we're allowed to get pre-reads done on students. So with the exception of last year, and they were waiting on like what the Supreme Court ruling was going to be on admission stuff. So they bumped it to August 1st pre-reads. So it'll be back to July 1st, which is what it's always been. So starting July 1st, we can get a pre-read on a kid and find out if they're admissible with player support, no chance of getting in. So like, do not recruit. Or if they're close, but need to retake a test like an SAT or an ACT, or if they're taking Calc 2 their senior year and they've traditionally done poorly in math, or that's been their lowest grade, our admissions people may say like, we're looking for a higher grade in Calc 2 and things look good. So the pre-read gives us like some insight into, who is actually admissible, which is great. But that's pretty much our timeline. It's like a 4-month sprint from June to commitment time.
Yeah, been there. It's tough to get. This is something that we've talked about before, but it's hard for coaches to get out on the road during the spring, during your season. Like, and it doesn't matter what level you're at, like, because you got to take care of your own guys. And yeah, if I'm sure if there's a kid that you like who's throwing 30 minutes away on a Monday and you guys are off, like, you or Jay might run over there and go watch him throw, but it's hard to get out and recruit. And, it's something we did at William and Mary, but it was 1 day a week. We weren't going to sacrifice missing practice to go see a guy, because you got to take care of the guys that are there, the guys that are going to help you right now. And I know that philosophy might be a little bit different depending on what program you're in, but taking care of your guys that are there, I think, is such an important thing. And, I know when I was at Vassar, like, it was June to October was a wild time.
Speed dating, baby. You gotta go quick. Like, it's, the high academic realm in the Northeast is, it is very competitive, man. You are, do you give kids deadlines? Do you not? Who's on them? What do those coaches traditionally do? Is that somebody that's going to give them a deadline? So like, I don't love it, but I have to do it if I'm going up against somebody that does. So yeah, it becomes a ride in your head that you can't get off sometime. You're on like your family vacation, and it's like, should I have thrown this kid an offer, like before he got to campus, and just so he's like feeling the love a little bit earlier, because then last day of vacation, your phone rings and the kid's committing somewhere else. Like it is so quick. It used to be you could be patient and not get burned. So like the main reason why I used to like to be patient was to get kids on campus for their official visit. I felt really good about like the overnight being the cherry on top. So like if you like Trinity, come spend 24 hours with the guys, eat in the dining hall, sit in class, like you're going to love it. People think Hartford doesn't have much to offer. Like you get an appreciation. You spend a couple of days here, you get an appreciation for like how great this city is. So if you liked it coming in, chances are you're going to love it when you're done. But I don't have that luxury anymore. It's just very few offers go out in the actual fall. With like late October, all of our offers are out. It's usually just waiting at that point. So it's tough. And again, we can't over recruit. So you're just constantly looking at your recruiting boards. Like, are we going to get this guy? If you don't feel good about it, it's like, hey, let's deadline him, let's force his hand. So the high academic D3 thing in New England and in the Northeast is it's become quite a game within the game for sure.
Do you guys hammer the Ivy League camps? Do you try to get to those? I know you got Yale pretty close. Like Harvard always was a really good place for us. Columbia always runs a good camp. And I say that because, high academic kids out there, they always default to head first or show ball, which can obviously be fruitful if you're a good player, right? But we tend to focus on like find schools that fit your academic profile. And when I used to work Columbia camp, there'd be 7 other coaches. Mike would come down from Middlebury, and Midkiff would come up from Swarthmore. Like, and now you've got Columbia and then 7 other really good academic schools. Is that part of your guys' strategy?
For sure. We go to about half the Ivy League camps. Again, it's split between Jay and I. So there's some that Jay will do then, but the reason why we don't go to more is sometimes those guys will go on the same weekend. So it's like, you got to pick one, but I've always tried to clear my calendar to make it up to Princeton. Back when I first started coaching, I mean, that used to be as big of an academic event as you could find, right? Because you're pulling kids down from New England, you're pulling kids up from the South, you're getting some Midwest kids to fly into Princeton camp. So that was that was must-see TV when I was at Amherst trying to like build my team at my first couple teams at Trinity. But yeah, we do. Jay's done Columbia. We've been to Harvard's. We're going to Yale's. So yes, we do what we can. There's only so much time in the calendar, but we do what we can.
When you go watch kids, what are some things that fire you up? Like when you go watch a kid play, like, and maybe not necessarily just a pure talent perspective, but we kind of flipped this on its head a little bit because we had a guy on who's the player development guy at Jacksonville State, and he talked about, I look for green flags when I go watch guys. Like I look for things that fire me up. So like when you go to watch a guy play, like what are the things that excite you during that evaluation process?
Oh man, you guys may not like this answer because I usually catch some bad vibes from people when I say this. I have no problem at all with a kid that has like an edge, but like maybe borderline like too much. So I am not a coach that gets upset after like a big strikeout. If you want to fire me up stuff, go for it, man. Like, you know what I mean? Give your team some energy. You just did something great. You had a great moment. It's part of a great day. Fire your team up, give them energy. I mean, there's nothing worse in college baseball than a game where like there's no energy on the field. Like I almost want to call a timeout. I wish it was like a basketball game. Call my team off the field like mid-inning just because it's just flat and terrible.
It's the worst.
It's the worst. The worst, especially like some of these early games where it's like 35 degrees, there's no energy, there's nobody in the stands. It's like, what the hell is going on right now?
So terrible.
But yeah, I mean, so I am good with all of it. Like just thinking of the Coach Bianco's middle infielders had like the couple years ago they had the middle infielders with like the bleached hair who were doing like the double play like stuff, and it to me it was all like relatively clean. It wasn't taking away from the game. It wasn't too much. It was energy. It was excitement about, you know, winning a game, you know, making a big play. Your team's out of an inning. Like, let's go. To me, it's no different than like you watch an NFL game, a guy gets a sack and it's just like a quick fire me up, fist pump, do whatever you want. Like, go back to your guys. And, you know, you see them like knocking helmets and pumping guys up. Like the baseball version of that is okay to me. Because again, the flip side of that is scary. You know, if I have like a bunch of Johnny B. Goods on the team, high academic kids, afraid to like piss somebody off, afraid to step out of line, like I don't want to be in that dugout. That feels tight and uncomfortable. And you know what I mean? Like, who wants to play in that environment? So what fires me up is that's why I love the state tournament games, you know, watching kids that have like grown up together, played baseball all their lives together. There's a little more investment there. So I will go just to see that stuff sometimes, you know what I mean? Just to see some energy on the field, because I think we can all agree that the travel ball stuff becomes more about the person. So if you started the game and threw 3 scoreless innings and struck out 5, but your team, you come out of the game and you lose 8-2, like that kid that started that game is on cloud 9. Like, he did his job. And, you know, again, in college baseball, it's not like that. You know what I mean? You want to do everything in your power to win a ball game. It's not easy to win. So that's what fires me up is guys that are, you know, they're confident. Like, it takes a confident kid to like lay it on the line like that and like not be afraid of showing it. So I like the confidence in a player as well. So that's probably the best answer I can give to that.
Yeah, like kids who got some fight in them.
Yeah, man.
I like the kids that have the fight, but I always thought, and I've said this before on here, but I actually, and this is a hot take that most people don't agree with me either. So I actually enjoyed like the meet and greet part of show ball or head first when kids like, because to me, like, if you have a confidence as a 15 or like a 16 or 17-year-old kid to walk up and like legitimately be able to hold a conversation and talk about the program, the school, like have questions that are insightful into what it is you're looking to do, like that to me tells me like, okay, this kid cares about what it is that he's going through. And like, I enjoyed that stuff. And I like, there's so many people like, oh, I hate this. I don't want to like, gotta talk to like, yeah, but like you can learn a lot more about these kids in these 20 minutes of standing here doing this. And I like, there were kids that I recruited that, you know, not that I got a ton of them, but there were kids that I recruited because at those events, like they came up and they had like legitimate questions. They were fun. And then watching them play, they got after and did stuff. I'm like, all right, well, he's squared away from an academic and what he's looking for in a program standpoint. And I like what he does. Like, let's see what happens. Like, I'm not saying all of them are going to end up in my program, but it was an insight that, you know, and if it's a kid from the Midwest, I'm not going to get to see him play. Like, I got to know that kid right there. So I enjoyed that stuff, but I know that I'm in the vast minority on that side of things.
I've had this talk with a couple of different colleagues. So like I think it's used across all sports, but when you say like, man, that kid has really good actions, like a shortstop, it's just like, man, like look at this kid, like the ownership of the position and confidence in what he's doing. Okay. So if a kid has good actions, how much has that kid worked to have those good actions? How confident is that kid to show you that on a baseball field? You know what I mean? That's why coaches like actions. That guy's practiced the hell out of that.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Fielding a ground ball for that kid is like breathing.
Yep.
That's why he has good actions. You know, he wants to showcase a strong arm because he's done his long toss. He knows how to throw. He's got a clean arm. He's got great carry on the throw. Like, so they work hand in hand. But yeah, like a kid with good actions, you're saying like that kid's confident as hell.
Yep.
And I think anybody's going to be drawn to that.
My other hot take is that I don't know if I've said this, but I've said it to Andy. I never crossed kids off because their parents brought them a Gatorade because it was super hot outside. Like I've never understood that part of like, oh, mom brought him a Gatorade. Like, yeah, it's 117 degrees on the turf. Like, do we want the kid to die of dehydration out here? Like, my wife used to bring me coffee when it was 35 degrees in doubleheaders on Saturdays. Like, am I not tough for this? Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Hot take.
Yeah, big difference if the kid yells at his mom from the dugout, like Will Ferrell.
Ma the meatloaf.
Yeah, like big difference between that and mom running over and tossing him a Gatorade so that the kid, has a little bit of energy.
Yeah, there's no water in the dugout, and it's 115 degrees on the turf. Suffer, because I suffered back when I was playing. Spare me.
Yes, this is the Keith we need.
Sorry. Go ahead, Andy.
No, I get you.
All right. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, Bryan. I'm super grateful that you've been able to join us and talk about this stuff because this is stuff that people need to hear. But our last question, as always, what advice would you give to a family that's going through this process right now?
I think two things. The first one I would say is there's probably somebody close to you. Okay. If you want to be a college baseball player, there's probably somebody close to you. It's like the 6 degrees, 5 degrees from Kevin Bacon or whatever. You're probably pretty close to leaning on somebody that's a college coach or has coached college players before. So you're just a good baseball guy that can give you some honest feedback of like let somebody like set parameters for you a little bit. This is framework. I'm not saying like if somebody tells you you're a Division III guy, you're a Division III guy. That is not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying take this advice as a coach or mentor or whoever, baseball guy that has seen guys go to the next level. You trust them. If they tell you like, hey, you're spinning your wheels, like if you're a sophomore, as you're spinning your wheels going to college camp, like just work on getting better. Take that money or that time commitment, that time commitment and get better. Maybe it's if it's a pitcher, maybe get some like private lessons or whatever. Dive into some driveline stuff. Like make a purchase that's going to make you like a better player. And again, like it should be like a confidence builder for a kid. If it's like, I don't know where you belong, but you're a college player, like that should pump you up. Because it's coming from somebody that knows what they're talking about. So I would seek those people out and let them provide like a framework. Like, okay, I'm not a terrible baseball player. Like I'm actually somebody that has been told by this person and probably multiple people that, this is a reachable star. This is a dream that can come to fruition. Because, and this is the part that this is the ugly truth. There's some kids that I think we can all agree, like it's just, they started with the game too late. It's not they don't have the baseball gene. They don't have the arm strength, the speed. They had an injury at the wrong time. Like you name it, like it's not in the cards for everybody. So lean on that person and let them kind of like steer the ship a little bit for you. My other advice for families that, have a potential collegiate student athlete, is let your son steer the ship. It's going to be a much more rewarding process for him if he's the one doing the work. This may be a Trinity and NESCAC thing. I get a lot of emails from mom and dad and not the kid. And sometimes it's like a talented kid. And like, yes, that is a little bit of a turnoff. I don't want to hear from mom and dad why Johnny is a good fit for Trinity. I want to hear from Johnny why he wants to be part of this program. I want him to be excited to send me some clips of like his last 2 weeks of at bats, and he's been, hitting the crap out of the ball. So if your son can do it, like make him do the heavy lifting. It's going to be a more rewarding process for him. And when he gets to the finish line and shows up on a campus, he's going to know that it was him that did it with parent support. Okay. Not mom and dad leading the way. And then the kid's just like riding the coattails, because he's going to get there. because of that. And then if, at some point the kid is going to have to steer a ship, right? There's parents that can coddle and continue to coddle like after school, but at some point that you got to arm that kid with the confidence that he can chase things down himself. The other advice is like, be calculated about how you go about your search. So like at some point it should be a wider net, get to know coaches, see what the interest is, try to like open as many doors as you can early. And then once you feel good about the response, like I think this is going to happen, then you can enjoy the process a little bit more and do the deeper dive of going to the camps of that specific school, going for official visits. That's the fun part. I know the stress is going to be like fever pitch until it's signed, sealed, and completely done. But again, it's the same thing I tell my guys. If this isn't fun, and you're not enjoying like this process, you should be doing something else. So like if there's not a point where you can like, be level-headed, stay focused on the goal, and like make a good decision for your future, like that should be exciting for kids. So that's probably my best advice. And the other advice, sorry, I did not get my training wheels off weight room wise until I showed up on a college campus, and my God, was that a rude awakening. I was like the kind of talented giraffe that had to like look at all these like Ferraris around me and all these like Panthers that were, elite movers and way stronger than me. So I'm not saying you need to be, Lou Ferrigno and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'll give Carl Weathers a shout out too. That guy was in pretty good shape. Rest in peace. But you should be excited about what you can do in there. Being bigger, faster, and stronger in baseball is very, very important, as it is in many sports. And if you can just start doing something, again, like I always use the excuse of like, I'm too busy for that. Football just ended. I got to start getting in shape, get my legs in shape for basketball. So you can always find an excuse. Maybe you've had an injury, maybe you don't like the soreness that you get from the weight room. It can be any number of things, but get comfortable in there, man. If you want a chance to play as a freshman and earlier in your career, man, you can level the playing field very quick in what you do from a strength and conditioning standpoint. So get those training wheels off. Do what is it, the Ken Revisit thing? Get comfortable with being uncomfortable in the weight room. It's not a fun place when you have no idea what the hell you're doing and you're the weakest guy in there. But man, what it will do for your confidence and the trickle effect of, eating better and just getting more confident, it is a complete game changer.
Yeah, I think the two things I want to touch on, and all of them are phenomenal points. But one, I'll get to the weight room in a second. One, the email thing. Like, it's not just unique to the NESCAC. It happened to me quite a bit. Like, the two things that I'll say about it. One, we're adults. We can tell when an email is written by another adult professional and a 17 or 16-year-old kid. There's semicolons and commas and everything's in the right place. Like, I know who wrote this. But the other piece of it, and I feel like this is and it could just be the Mandela effect or whatever. Like when you read them, like they generally start out with like, well, Johnny's just super busy doing X, Y, and Z. And like, it does create a red flag when mom and dad are saying it. But then if you're going to tell me that you're too busy to write, like take 20 minutes to write emails, then that creates more red flags for me. Like, okay, like if he can't handle kind of doing the bare minimum work of what he would have to do here on campus, is he going to be able to do it here? And like, it creates like, it creates a lot more doubt. It creates, there's a lot more that comes out instead of just being like, hey, on Thursdays for a half an hour, just, copy and paste some emails to these coaches. And, you don't create those seeds of doubt. But the weight room piece is huge. And we talk about it a lot, but again, I saw Joe yesterday, so we were talking about this, and the fact of like the physicality between, and we've all seen it, but the physicality that you see between even your sophomores and your freshmen. But the important piece, I think, that people even kind of miss out on going to college and trying to be in, like, being in the weight room and being physical. Like, you've never gone through the season you are about to go through as a freshman in college. Like, you've never played 40 games, 40 plus games if we're getting into postseason, the travel, the going to class, the weight room, the living on your own, the eating on your all, like, you've never done it before. And if you go in not really giving yourself a chance to be as physical as you possibly can be, like, you're already going to be behind the eight ball. Plus, you're going to lose so much during the season. And, you know, you've seen it. I've seen it. Andy's seen it. Like, your freshmen will, if they play a decent amount, they start to break down a lot faster than if they're not physically there yet. They'll break down a lot faster than your older guys. And I think that that's, you know, I would like to start framing it that way when we talk about that stuff on here. Just because it is super important, and we can talk about it until we're blue in the face. But I think the piece that I think we could do a better job of, Andy and I, is like saying these types of things of like, you're going to break down. You've literally never done this before. Like, and if you're going to play Division 2 or 3, like, you're playing 56, 60 plus games, like, you will break down. We all played Division 1 baseball, the three of us. Like, we know what that season looks like from a class standpoint, from a travel standpoint, from games. Like, you will break down. And, you know, being able, like, what changed my career was being in the weight room a lot more. I went from 195 to playing at 215. Like, I was better when I was at 215 than I was at 190. And I didn't lose as much weight, and I was more physical, and I was able to handle things. And I wish that and I was in the weight room probably a little bit more than most kids my age when I was a freshman. But, like, again, to your point, like, I wrestled, I played football. I was like, I was sucked out at 171, being like, yeah, no, I'll put a weight on when I get to it. And then you get to college, and it's like, yikes.
Right, but even I'm sure you would agree with this. Even whatever that little bit was that you said, like, you were in the weight room a little bit, that probably paid huge dividends. Plus the wrestling stuff with, like, the body control and core strength.
Yeah,
like, that set you way ahead.
It did.
There's no doubt.
No, but I just think that the weight room piece, and I feel like we all know how important it is when we coach, like when Andy and I coach in college, and you do, like, you can give yourself so much more of an opportunity to play super early in your career if you can get as physical as you can possibly be as early as you possibly can be. So that's how I'd like to frame that moving forward, Andy. I just figured that out while I was talking to Bryan here, so that's what we're going to do.
That's exactly why we do this, Keith.
Yeah, there was.
It's just massive. Like, it's such a game changer for kids, and once they fall in love with it, because you touched on it, Bryan. The weight rooms. Everybody loves to go take ground balls and go throw to TrackMan and take batting practice. Like, showing up and going to the weight room, taking care of your body, like, it's tedious and it's not always that fun. And if you don't enjoy doing that, college baseball is going to be a task and not something that you enjoy doing, because you can't exist without it these days. And kids are bigger, faster, and stronger before they get to campus. But if you want to get in the mix, it's a non-negotiable.
No doubt. And I've tried to build on that, especially the mental health and the coaching the whole athlete that's come under a microscope post-COVID. So I've started doing like a health and wellness talk with our team. I think I'm qualified enough and comfortable enough with it. And that's like a hobby of mine, just like away from baseball, is just diving into all of that stuff. And I was blown away this fall when I did it with our guys. Like, they were fully locked in, you know what I mean? In a lot of ways, more interested in hearing about importance of sleep, being intentional about, like, your breathing, getting in the weight room, all of that stuff. We got, half our team wearing Whoop bands now and just, like, tracking all their workouts and stuff, which I love. But the reason why I love that isn't because of, like, necessarily the performance advantages we're getting out of them at Trinity. I want these guys to be set up for life. Like, you can set up quite a blueprint for yourself. You can walk up the hill here. I'm on campus now. You can walk up the hill to the Mather Dining Hall and get 3 really good meals. You can also go up there and eat like crap. But again, just, like, making choices when they're easy is really important to do. Like you can just walk up there and you can have the healthiest stuff you can imagine. It's easier for them than it is, for me, especially with two little kids. But I just wanted to arm them with the knowledge to be able to carry this with them throughout their life, right? And just be healthier people, because I think we can all agree that's a problem in America. So
yeah, love every second of that. That's just phenomenal. And I think it speaks to what you can learn and how important that the players are to coaches, right? Like you don't do that for you. You do that for the kids because it's long-term benefit. It's making sure those guys come out the other end of your program better equipped to handle life, when we all know that once you get out of college, it's not nearly as cool and as fun a lot of the time. Like you got to, being able to handle the real world it can be difficult at times. And all those guys coming out of your program, like they're going to be well equipped to handle that. So I think that's awesome that you do that.
So it creates the discipline, but it creates I'm 37. Like I'm 37. We have a 2-year-old. My wife's pregnant. My wife is a spin instructor on top of being a head women's lacrosse coach. Like I don't want to go to the gym 4 or 5 days a week, but like I feel better about it. My physically, mentally, like I enjoy doing it, but like, you know what I mean? Like yeah, man, it's tough, but when you fall in love with it and you really do enjoy doing it, like the benefits are so much more in the long run. Like, yeah, there's days where I drag myself to, like today, didn't want to go to the gym, but I went for 45 minutes and I walked out and I was like, I feel a hell of a lot better than I did 45 minutes ago. So I'm glad I did that today. But, I think that's awesome. My wife does, she's, I've said it on here before, but she's a spin instructor on top of being a lacrosse coach. So she, she's huge into that with all of her girls. Like, I want you to be able to, care about your fitness long after you leave here.
Sure. Yeah. And your kids will reap the benefits of that as well. So
correct.
They certainly pick up on it.
Well, gentlemen, I think that's a pretty good way to end it for tonight. Bryan, thanks. I know you got 2 little ones at home and you're still on campus. So really appreciate you taking, an hour and a half to sit down. Awesome podcast, man. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm glad you guys are doing this. Like I said, you're filling a major need, which is cool. So good luck with the continued success of this thing. Keep it rolling.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bryan.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Tune in next week. Thank you for listening this week. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and smash that like button for us. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at EMD Baseball. If you want to find out what me and Keith do to help families and players navigate the recruiting process, go ahead and check us out on emdbaseball.com. Take a few minutes to check out our new online academy. I promise you'll get some good information out of that. Thanks again for listening. Check in with you next week.